Hello everybody, Dokkan Assets here. Today we are back with another animation analysis video. And ladies and gentlemen, we finally are getting to take a look at the brand new Saiyan Day Fizz Dokkan Fest Super Saiyan God Goku. I am very excited for this unit, just like a ton of people are. Obviously, we have been waiting so long for a really good Dokkan Fest God Goku, and we got him. This guy is absolutely cracked in terms of his kit, and so today we're gonna find out if he is cracked in terms of his animations. This will be a very fun one to go through. I have a lot to say in this video, and funny enough, this video is going up on my birthday, so that's kind of cool. I didn't think I'd be doing an animation analysis on my birthday, but here we go. Of course, as per usual, a couple of things before we get started, as we go ahead and watch this through all the way one time. For one, as per usual, as I always like to say, I am by no means an animation professional or nothing like that. Obviously, I just look at these Dokkan assets all the time, and of course, look at these super attacks all the time, so I feel like I have a pretty good idea of what makes a good super attack and whatnot. And, of course, well, actually, I guess I didn't have two things to say. I guess that's all I had to say. I swear there's something else I usually say. Oh, as we are recording this right here in the, wee hours of the release of this, obviously, the Dokkan now happened, and then they basically dropped the animations for this guy. We are not going to have the comparison for the side-by-side as we do sometimes, because obviously, I want to get this video out as soon as possible. So, of course, we are going to be going in with just the Dokkan animations today. By the way, if you are curious why I am using the JP animations, when it comes to the animations and the way that they upload them, for some reason, Global always cuts off part of the animations on the side. And as well, the Global animations are just lower quality. The assets for them are actually lower quality in the game. I've made a thread on Twitter about it before. Honestly, I'll probably make a video going in depth about that at some point. But that is the reason why we're using the JP. Now, quick thoughts before we get started. Personally, I really love all of the Super Saiyan God animations. I think that they look really nice. And this, of course, the active skill, right? I think that the actual, I will not let you destroy my world, which I'm so glad that's what they used, by the way, because I was really thinking that Global was going to pull a funny on us and, be like, you will not destroy my planet, or something like that. So I'm really glad that not only did they use that scene, but that's the actual voice line that they used was the proper one. I will say, when it comes to Goku Super Saiyan animations, I have quite a bit to say about these. So it'll be interesting once we get there. But of course, we're going to take a look at Vegeta first. So let's go ahead and get into Vegeta now. I will say, it's so weird to me, okay, when it comes to the duality between the unfeatured featured banner units, as I like to call them, right? Affectionately referred to as the side banner units, right? A lot of the time with these side banner units, it's really like hit or miss for these animations. They're either like arguably as good as a Dokkan Fest, or they're dog water. And I usually like to go into these animations with a little bit of a different lens, because obviously, I'm not expecting Dokkan Fest quality from these, right? Because obviously it's just, a side banner unit. It's going to go in the unfeatured pool. But Dr. Zero and Dr. Mew, the unfeatured unit from last time, kind of set, I don't want to say a new precedent, but almost, because their animations were just incredible, right? They were crazy good for a unfeatured unit, right? Now, for our boy Vegeta here, I will say it's weird because there are a couple parts of this that I absolutely love, and there's a couple parts of this that I think are really awkward and kind of a shame that they used smaller assets for it. By the way, One other thing that I do want to point out, because it's going to be present from this entire video before we get into Vegeta specifically, I think they did something with the sprites. I know for a fact that lately in Dokkan, they have been updating the sprites to be a little bit more higher quality sprites. And it kind of looks like whatever boss they're fighting here is definitely higher quality. I know that's weird to say because it literally looks like you're looking at a Beerus Minecraft skin. But the actual, like, edges on the pixels, right? And the detail in, of course, albeit still a quote-unquote lower quality. I don't know if I would call this low quality. It's almost just like a smaller asset, right? You can tell that it's not as blurry as it was before. Like, even looking at this one, right, which is obviously like when the character smacks against the screen, you can tell that this asset looks a lot better than a lot of the assets that we've previously seen. If we even go to that scene where Goku's fighting Beerus, I just want to throw it in there, right? This looks so much more higher quality and has that same sort of effect that the one that we looked at just before we looked at the one where he splats against the KO screen, right? It looks like a higher quality Beerus asset, but you can still see like the pixels more, but it's not as blurry. It's almost like they're more detailed, right? Like it's a clear image, but the actual image itself that they use for this animation is still really small. It's very weird, but it's cool. It's a step in the right direction because obviously we've been asking for them to update the sprites in a meaningful way for some time. So that's just something that I wanted to point out before we even got into anything, because obviously that's something that I've been asking for a long time. And it's not exactly what I was looking for, because obviously I would love it if they just looked like a normal asset, right? Like if they basically looked like all the Goku and Vegeta stuff in this video, you know, in terms of like the quality of the PNG used. But this is certainly a step in the right direction, and I'm happy that they're listening, because I know this is something that people have been asking for. And to be fair, right, obviously when it comes to these enemy sprites, they're on the screen for like seconds, unless it's one where like a character literally grabs them and drags them down, like STR Vegito, right? The enemy sprite is like literally in your face. Then it's a little bit different, because then you're just like, ew. When it comes to stuff like this, where they're just on the screen for like moments at a time, I suppose I can forgive it. Anyway, let's get back to the boy Vegeta. I just wanted to point that out before I, you know, went on my tangent about both of these units. Okay, so y'all know that I'm kind of not a fan when they do these far out shots when I feel like they could be a little bit farther in. However, I do like the pose up for Vegeta. I think that that does look very nice. However, the transition of the assets here is, oh boy, it is a little bit jarring to say the least. Look at the change from the quality of this Vegeta, and not to mention he doesn't really like jump, you know what I mean, or like spring forward. It's basically like he's getting ready to, and then he's already in the air. And then you can see this asset is actually super high quality. Obviously, taking a look at this, right, you can see that this is a very nice looking asset of Vegeta. It's just a little bit of a jarring jump, right, especially going from this very like, I don't want to say bare minimum lines, but just like lighter outlines, right? Because that's not a bad thing, right? It's just the style of this particular asset. But you can tell with these ones that are a little bit smaller, they're a lot darker, right? The other thing I want to point out about this Vegeta specifically is, holy cow, dude! This looks exactly like the Battle of Gods style. Hydrate or Dihydrate, by the way. Look at this, dude. Like, when I first saw these, when they showed these on Twitter, because obviously they showed these animations, you know, after the Dokkan Now, they only showed like a preview of the unit in the Dokkan Now. I saw this and I was really impressed, because like, this looks like it's ripped right out of the movie in terms of this scene specifically. And just like the lighting, the coloring, the way that Vegeta's like complexion and his body looks inside the aura that he's inside, right? That obviously surrounding his body. So good. Looks exactly like Battle of Gods. Definitely have to give them credit for that. Looks fantastic. So then we have Vegeta giving the beatdown on Beerus. You guys know that I'm usually not a fan when it comes to these like kind of far away beatdowns. I always kind of wish they could do something a little bit zoomed in. But again, because this is a, you know, side banner unit, right? I'm going to kind of excuse it a little bit. And not to mention, I think it serves its purpose well enough, right? Even though it is literally just a couple of PNGs transitioning between each other. I mean, it works well for, like, what's supposed to be a quick beatdown against the enemy, right? By the way, I really, really like this angle here where you have the fists clashing against the enemy. I think that's really cool. And the follow-through has some motion lines on it. I really, really like that. I think that's definitely some very cool little details. And obviously, this is sort of like a first-person perspective, basically, when it comes to this sort of thing. And I will say, you know, as much as obviously our enemy sprites are pretty pixelated, very good use of the sprites at the disposal, you know, that they had on hand, right? Obviously, to then basically make the animation look better, right? In terms of Vegeta giving the beatdown. Okay. So then, of course, we have the actual card art pop up on the screen, which looks pretty cool. Vegeta's face definitely looks a little funny here, if I'm being honest, right? Especially in this one, right? It looks a little bit better once it transitions to this, which I think is a fine transition, by the way. But I'm not going to give Dokkan the L on this one because a lot of the time when it comes to this sort of thing, it tends to be the source material that looks this way, and Dokkan is just trying to mimic it as best as they can. So especially not having the source material right next to the animations, I'm going to chalk it up to an L just for it looking a little bit weird in the original, you know, movie that it came from. Regardless, though, Vegeta moving forward does look pretty good. And then we actually have... So, this transition, I will say, the first time I saw this, it was pretty jarring for me personally, right? I think there's a lot of good, like, assets within this section, but the transition is very choppy. It is just a ton of poses. It's not very fluid, right? I think a very good example, funny enough, of a lot of the fluid movement that, you know, I've kind of come to expect from these Dokkan animations, ironically enough, is in the Dr. Mew and Super 17 that we took a look at last time. Their animations were super fluid in the movement, and especially with Super 17 himself, right? This just feels extremely choppy, and like they cut a ton of corners when it comes to that animation, right? Now, moving on to the next section, which is obviously kind of zoomed out a little bit here. I do like that impact frame, and that is a good way to transition. You can see Vegeta's winding up for the kick here, and then they use this impact frame to kind of distract you from the leg moving, right? And then they, you know, have him actually kick. So that's definitely a good way to do it, right? I do, again, kind of wish this was a little bit more high quality and they didn't use these sort of like farther away shots for this, because I think it would have looked really cool. It would have been awesome if this would have been like a first person perspective, but I'm sure that they're trying to keep this angle because, you know, that's obviously how it was in the movie. And the kick away, it's interesting because you can kind of see Vegeta right at the very end of this. Obviously he kicks out, right? But then you can kind of see his leg go back for some reason, right? Again, this is when he's kicking away Beerus, and then his leg goes back, and Beerus comes back towards him, and now his leg is out again, right? With Beerus sliding away, which this shot looks really good, and again, good use of the sprite too. Vegeta looks nice in the background. Honestly, I feel like this is an animation error. I guess I can't, like, say that for sure, but this makes no sense to me that he would kick him away, and then he would have his leg back and Beerus would be back, right? Maybe if it was like, oh, he's bringing his leg back down to his side or something like that, you know? But Beerus should still be moving the opposite direction. And not to mention, Vegeta has his leg out in this scene like he just kicked Beerus. So, I don't know. It's just kind of weird that, you know, that little part is in there, but... you know, it is what it is, I suppose. I like this shot of the rocks and obviously the dust kind of settling there. It looks very, very nice. This is a good shot, actually, for a far away shot, right? A very good kind of establishing shot of, you know, how far he hit Beerus. And you can actually see the ki moving on Vegeta here in the distance, which is a really nice attention to detail. I really, really like that. Okay. So now we move on to the transformation. As you can see, we have the Bulma smack here. There isn't really a lot to write home about. I feel like a lot of the time with side banner units especially, and even just like transformations in Dokkan, it's kind of funny because I feel like those are some of the animations that get shafted the most, right? it's so weird. Like, I was talking about this with Blue Gogeta and STR, or no, sorry, STR Blue Gogeta and Tech Blue Vegito, right? The guys who just Easy Aid for the JP anniversary. And I was talking about how, like, I really like these units, and, like, so much of the transformation is cool, but so much of it is just, like, so basic. And I feel like for some reason, for some Dokkan units, the transformation is just, like, so, like, simple and isn't really that crazy, but for some of them, they go all out for it. Like, this is literally just they're zooming in on Bulma's PNG, they have the impact frame, and now Bulma is, you know, flying away. I understand that they can't include Beerus in here because, of course, you know, whatever enemy is technically supposed to be, like, hitting Bulma, obviously, you know, that's kind of what they're trying to imply. So then, you know, it, like, fits in with the scene. But I know for a fact they've done some things before where it's, like, they just kind of, like, not neglect that, but they just sort of I almost said forgore. I always say forgore instead of forget. They always just kind of forgo that. Or not, I shouldn't say always. They do sometimes, rather, is what I meant to say. And just kind of, like, have the enemy in there. So, I don't know. It would have been cool to sort of, like, have the enemy be in the shot somehow. I don't know how they would have done that with the sprites, though. So, I understand why it's like this. And the animation of Bulma falling is, like, it's fine, I guess. It's not really a ton to write home about. I don't really think it looks the best. I feel like it could have been better. It's interesting that they have this zoom shot, and then they have this shot of Bulma falling here. It's also kind of weird, I will say, because her hair is almost like a lot more still surrounded around her head. And then when they cut to the next shot, it is a lot more akin to how it is in the movie, where her hair kind of spreads out when Beerus gives her the whap to the face, right? So I don't know. It's kind of interesting that that doesn't, like, flow as well. And I will say, I do feel like this cut is kind of a little bit abrupt. Like, not that it doesn't make sense, excuse me, for the scene. But I just feel like it could have been done a little bit better. Again, this could also be an instance of the movie doing it this way, and so that's why they decided to do it like this. But, you know, obviously, since I don't have the source footage next to me, you know, I don't know. But nonetheless, Dokkan has still improved upon stuff like this in the past. So, even so, right, I feel like if that was something for the movie, they definitely could have, you know, kind of done their own thing a little bit more for that. Regardless, however, we do have Vegeta appear in the background from the white, and we have Bulma basically just disappear. From what I remember, that is how this transition is in the movie. And again, I think Vegeta's face does look a little bit funny here, but again, I'm going to chalk that up to the movie's animation, right? We do have the zoom in on Vegeta, which this shot is a little weird, I gotta be honest, right? It, like, zooms, and then the zoom just stops. I don't know. I kind of, like, was expecting something else. I don't know why it was, like, so jarring to me that the zoom just kind of, like, comes to a halt. I feel like with other Dokkan animations, they have something different. I don't know, it's weird. It's just, like, an immediate halt. And then this face change, literally being, like, one frame, is also kind of a little bit jarring, right? It's not the worst, but I feel like it definitely could have been done a little bit better, because I've seen much better, like, animations for opening mouths in Dokkan rather than just, ooh, ah, you know? Regardless, though, we have Vegeta then, you know, obviously just the "That's my Bulma" line. And this actually looks really good in terms of the mouth flaps, which is kind of funny, speaking of what we were just talking about before. But yeah, this shot of Vegeta shaking, I do like this, right, with the rocks kind of coming up under Vegeta, right? Obviously, the anger, the screen shaking, which makes sense because he's so angry. I do kind of wish this wasn't just a PNG, because this is literally just him standing there and not, you know, like his arms moving a little bit, you know, or him kind of like shaking a little bit or anything like that. It's very basic. And not to mention, when he finally, right, like powers up, instead of having him actually throw his arms down, they have this sort of impact frame here, which is really cool, I will say. I love the yellow effect that they did for this. I think that that is pretty nice. And then, of course, you have the electricity bolt, and then you go to this shot. I don't quite remember if that's how it was in the movie, but I think it is just a little bit of a jarring cut, right? Nonetheless, though, this shot looks pretty cool, despite how far away this is. Obviously, you have this smoke in front of Vegeta, right? Which I don't remember if there was smoke behind him in this scene, but I know for Dokkan essays before, they have done where it looks like the smoke is actually like whirling around him. Like, funny enough, last year's Saiyan Day unit, Majin Vegeta, of course, for the final explosion, the smoke is like whirling around his feet. So it's kind of funny that they didn't do that here and they just had it in the front, but it looks good for what it is. Vegeta's aura looks good, and obviously he looks really good. The ground cracking and the actual aura like spewing out of Vegeta looks really, really nice. I think this shot at the very end here is easily the best looking one, if I do say so myself, in this whole thing. I think it's just composed very nice, and all the effects at play, right? Even the dust clouds too. Everything looks really, really good. Okay, so now we move on to the Super Saiyan 2 essay, and interestingly enough, I think that this is like almost the same, right? Let's look at this animation one more time, right? A Vegeta squatting down, bada boom, right? He gets into position. It is, yeah, look at that. Wow, I did not realize that that was almost like the exact same asset, except they buff him up a little bit to make him, you know, Super Saiyan 2. Let me see if I can't get that right. That pose right there, and then that pose right there. That is literally the same. Let's watch that beginning bit again where he kind of squats down, right? Interesting. That's almost like a unit super attack kind of thing, but it's just a regular unit. Yeah, and then we'll go back here. Yep, that is like literally the same. Interesting. Obviously, it's a little bit of a different asset because, again, he's buffer and his hair looks a little bit different, but just kind of an interesting thing to note that they essentially like reused the animation for that. We have the same thing here where Vegeta dashes. However, ironically enough, this is executed so much better than the one for the Super Saiyan 1 one where Vegeta dashes forward, because the way that they animate this, despite this being such a big jump in assets, right, in the style, this is such a better way to do it. The way that they have him jump forward, have the motion lines, and the way that they have him move so quickly towards the camera, right, actually makes him feel like he's jumping forward, right? Rather than with this shot, right, it's literally just like pop, right, and he's sort of sliding along the ground, right? You can definitely tell the difference between this one, right, with and then the Super Saiyan 2 one with him moving forward, right? This one looks so much better. Now, I will say, this entire sequence after the jump forward is insane. I know I have been kind of not really gassing up our boy Vegeta here, but holy moly, dude. This sequence right here is crazy. This sequence of Vegeta dashing forward, the expression change, and then the turnaround, the rotoscoping on this. Holy, dude, this entire sequence right here looks like it was ripped right out of the movie. I'm not even gonna lie to you, when I saw this entire part, I kind of thought, you know how sometimes people make those Dokkan animations where they take a clip from the anime and they add like the they add the Dokkan cut-ins and the text and the little like effects and stuff like that, right? When I watched this, I like forgot for 2 seconds. I forgore, I can actually use the word. I forgot for 2 seconds that I was watching an actual Dokkan animation and thought that I was watching one of these animations where they like take the, you know, different just animations from the actual anime and shove all the Dokkan effects on them, because it just looks that good. It literally looks like they just took the scene from the anime and translated it into Dokkan, which is so cool to see. I really, really like that a lot. Obviously, there is a little bit of an immersion break when you see how pixelated Beerus is, but I digress. Obviously, this punch looks really, really good. The punch looks super satisfying too, right? It feels like it has a lot of impact. And the impact frame, speaking of which, right? Speaking of impact, I guess, works really well for this because obviously, you know, Vegeta's sort of follow through, or not follow through, it would be just like, I guess, the initial launch of the punch is kind of covered up by that, but I think it works well. And the motion lines really do a lot to sort of bring this punch all together. Not to mention the aura and the electricity sort of follows the fist to the focus point that they want you to be looking at for this animation, which I think is really cool. I don't know if that was intentional or not. I would like to think so, but nonetheless, that is really cool because that's definitely something that I would love to see more of, where they kind of use the effects that they have at hand to, you know, bring your attention to the specific part of the screen that you're looking at, because that's a great way to do that with those effects at play. I really want to get that one specific line of air. Yeah, this one looks really good, and I feel like this one in specific does a lot to sort of, you know, really imply how fast Vegeta's fist is moving for this scene. Definitely really like this section. Now, here's the thing, right? This looks really good, and then we transition to this scene, which I think doesn't look as good. Obviously, you know, this whole time I basically have been kind of dogging on these. You know, I'm not a fan of the perspective on these as much, or at least that they don't use some higher quality assets for this. However, I will say, obviously, it is just a little section in between to kind of transfer between the two. And I do remember when he punches Beerus, they actually do zoom out for this shot, right? I do pretty vividly remember that from the movie, so I'm sure that that is movie accurate. However, I will say it is a little bit weird with the position of his fists, because this doesn't really make sense. His other hand would obviously be back here, and of course his fist is forward. But now his fist is already pulled back. It's almost like this shot should have been before. It's kind of weird. But nonetheless, you have Vegeta turning a little bit. This is some nice rotoscoping. This actually does look like Vegeta is sort of like turning, right? He's actually like twisting his body, which is pretty cool. And then we have the punch, right? Which obviously it just looks all right. It's a punch. There is a little bit of minimal movement on there, which is nice. But this shot looks incredible. This looks great. Again, this is another fantastic example of the electricity sort of accenting the motion here, right? And kind of like setting your eyes to look where they should be focused in the scene. We transition back out with a kick from Vegeta, with obviously Beerus flying up. Now, I will say, again, as much as I'm not a fan of the like smaller sections of this, right? I do think that for what it is, it works really well, because again, it's another scene that does a great job of, you know, really showing how much of a beatdown that Vegeta is giving to Beerus, right? With how, bam, how impactful those punches feel, right? Despite how far out that it is from the camera, right? And again, it's just personal preference on that one. I still think that the punches have a lot of impact, which makes me really happy, because there are a lot of Dokkan essays that I see that I'm like, wow, that punch was a wet noodle. But these punches feel really nice. With Vegeta fly from the ground, which looks pretty good. I like that asset a lot. And interesting, before we actually see him kind of transition, we then go into the card art here, which has Vegeta winding up. You can really see the pixels on Beerus here, by the way. Look at on his hands. Holy dude. So we have Vegeta readying the Gallic Gun, which I think he looks pretty good here. Honestly, I think this just looks a little bit wonky because the sprite is like literally in the way of the animation. I do kind of wish there was a little bit more in between this and this, right? I wish there was a little bit more animation of him actually throwing the attack forward. But again, that is a little bit of nitpicking for sure. And of course, then we have the blast actually launch. I will say this was definitely pretty jarring for me, speaking of asset changes from before, right? With how this looks, right? Which looks very like anime-esque. Let me get that Gallic Gun back up there. Right, it looks very anime-esque and obviously is very high quality. To this shot from the back where this looks like an entirely different essay, if I'm being honest with you, with how this is styled, right? Just kind of a jarring transition between the two, but I do like the purple aura here. Obviously, the electricity is very cool looking. And of course, the Gallic Gun looks nice. I like the effects amidst the Gallic Gun, I guess would be the best way to say it, right? There's kind of like those energy waves, I guess you would call it, like in the lines and in the ball, that really makes it feel like it's a ball of energy and not just generic purple circle that sometimes Dokkan likes to do, right? Definitely way prefer it when they do it like this. We have an impact frame here for Vegeta, and this is cool. They transition to this shot where it really looks like the blast is kind of, you know, taking over the whole scene. That is very cool. And then of course, everything kind of getting enveloped by it looks really good. And the aura, again, the actual like key itself looks really nice for this particular section. This is a nice angle too. with a little just kind of dust coming down from the bottom. Yeah, the key looks fantastic here. It's super well animated in terms of all this, like, you know, almost kind of looks like lava or something like that. But it makes this key feel a lot more lifelike and a lot more anime accurate than just, again, the big purple circle in the sky. Alright, so now, oh man, dude, I'm so excited. It's so weird. I'm so excited to talk about the God stuff in this, but I'm not so excited to talk about the Super Saiyan stuff, I gotta be honest with you. But bearing the, I will not let you destroy my world part. Obviously, that part I'm looking forward to. So, this whole scene, dude, literally is just like right out of the anime. All of the effects here look great. The shading on the characters is literally ripped right out of the movie, dude. This looks exactly how it looked like in the movie. It looks so good. They absolutely nailed this scene, which makes me very, very happy. You have the blue energy kind of surround all of them, which is really, really cool. Again, looks very, very nice. You have this really cool shot of all of the characters. It's kind of weird because, like, they're so high quality, but they're also blurry, which is obviously, like, you know, the particular scene, right? That's how it looked. So it makes sense that they're, you know, kind of looking that way. But it is very interesting that they just kind of still stuck with that, you know, despite they could have, you know, just instead of doing the blur effect, right? They could have definitely just had this be a regular PNG, but I'm glad that they kept it as anime accurate as possible. And something I didn't even notice until now, this is such incredible detail, bro. Goku's eyes move. Look at this. He was looking forward, and you can see him looking over to the person that's next to him, right? You can even see as we turn around here, right? Obviously, Vegeta keeps his eyes looking forward, right? Videl looking very serious. Very, very cool attention to the little detail there with Goku's eyes for sure. Very, very nice as well. Obviously, everything gets a little blurry here. This looks very, very good too, obviously, because it's supposed to be like the camera's kind of spinning around them, and that looks really good. I will say, this is kind of funny that they just sort of like flash this imagery on the screen, but, you know, it is accurate to the anime as far as I'm aware. So it's just kind of a little bit funny because it's like this encompasses the screen and that feels like it's supposed to be there, right? But then you just kind of have, like, as we go a little bit ahead, right? PNG of planet, which I think this is Planet Vegeta, right? And then we have PNG of another planet. It's just kind of funny that, like, you know, it doesn't encompass the whole screen, but again, I'm pretty sure that it's like supposed to just be taking it right from the anime. And then this is a nice little reference here. We actually have the boy Yamoshi making a little cameo. Obviously, this guy, if you are unaware in the Dragon Ball canon, they mention him like barely at all, but he's the original Super Saiyan God. We've never actually seen what he looks like, so it's kind of funny that he's getting a cameo in Dokkan, but this is how it looked in the movie. The style of the actual, like, look of him, right, and kind of like the energy that was enveloping him looked like this with this particular shading. I will say it just does look a little bit silly with how small it is compared to everything else that's going on in the background, right? I do kind of wish that there would have been a little bit more transition on this too, because obviously this is such a quick pose change, but again, it's okay, right? And then of course we have the aura. I actually want to see real quick, do Goku's eyes change here? No, okay, so they're just facing forward. We have this very nice looking aura, right, that obviously is kind of encompassing the characters here, right? And then we have Goku begin to float up to the sky. I love, by the way, coloring them blue, because obviously that's how the energy looks in the anime. And you can see Goku floating up to the sky. Again, by the way, look at this very nice little bit of animation here. Not only does the aura obviously move a little bit on Goku, but it kind of just looks like a PNG that's floating upward, but his arm moves the slightest bit right there, right? You can see it move right there. And I know that that is like nitpicking in the reverse way, right? In a good way, I guess, because it's pointing out something that's good about this essay. And I know probably nobody will notice it, or maybe you'll notice it subconsciously, but it is little things like this in Dokkan animations that help them feel so much more lifelike, and not only just anime accurate, but less like PNGs just sliding around on the screen, right? That's the stuff that I want to see them include in these animations that are missing this type of stuff, right? We have Goku obviously getting the aura around him. The blinding light here looks absolutely fantastic as it sort of washes over. And oh baby, not only does this initial aura look really good, the blue effects on Goku look great as they dissipate. And they nailed it, bro. They nailed it. They did so good, dude. Oh my gosh, bro. They killed it. They killed it, dude. It's so good. The little blue effects on Goku as he's coming forward, right? The way that his hair flutters there. Oh, baby. It looks so good. Exactly how I remember it from this scene. Obviously, this is a super iconic shot from the movie when Goku goes Super Saiyan God. Of course, it's the reveal of the new transformation. So, of course, it's going to be an iconic shot. And I think they nailed it. I think they absolutely nailed it. 100%. I love the way that this scene looks. It looks fantastic. This is like genuinely one of the best like pieces of Dokkan animation I've seen for sure, right? It looks great. It looks absolutely fantastic. Now, I will say, I do not remember if this transition is like this in the anime. I feel like they just zoom in on Goku and he closes his eyes rather than them kind of like fading between scenes here, right? Where you have, you know, Goku on the screen and then it fades into the close-up of him. I don't remember if it's like that. However, personally, it's just personal preference, I guess. But I would much rather have that type of transition present here than just a jump cut between, you know, going from this shot here to this shot here, right? I would much rather have that little bit of a fade there, which is ironic because I talk about the fading between assets all the time, but that's more like the ghosting effect when it could be a proper, you know, just movement that I don't like. This is just a transition between scenes, and I think it works a lot better. And maybe this is nitpicking a little bit in a good way, but I feel like this soft this soft fade really emphasizes to the sort of serenity and grace of Super Saiyan God, right? Which I think is really cool that even just something that small can kind of emphasize that in an animation. This looks really good, by the way, too. Obviously, this close-up shot of Goku looks amazing as well. Definitely no denying that. And when he opens his eyes, dude, this is what I'm talking about. This is how you do a transition of something opening on a face, bro. Look at this, right? You have Goku actually kind of lift his head up and ready it up a little bit before the eyes finally open, right? And everything moves naturally and moves up, right? That is so much better than just going from, okay, eyes are closed to eyes are open, right? That is such a better way to do an animation like that rather than just jumping from one PNG to another, right? Really, really like that. And I'm glad that they went all out for these animations, right? For sure. Let's go ahead now and take a look at the Super Saiyan God Super Attack animation here. This looks incredible, dude. Even just this first scene, oh my gosh. It looks just like the movie. Obviously, we're going to kind of like push Beerus to the side here because, of course, again, it's just the sprites from Dokkan. But obviously, disregarding him, this entire scene looks so good. And even Goku at this far away looks so anime accurate. And here's the thing, right? This is gonna kind of go back to me. I felt like I said it a million times that like, oh, this far away shot of Vegeta, blah 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 blah. I don't really like how it looks, you know. And I ironically think that Goku sort of, I don't want to say proves my point because then that would be like, oh, I'm objectively correct, which is not true, right? But this shows to me that they can make assets that look incredibly good and movie accurate, right, to the source material, and even just look a lot nicer, right, than these sort of like almost like story asset like esque sprites like this, right? And funny enough, Goku's even farther away than Vegeta in this scene, right? And again, I understand that this is just a side banner unit, right? But you know, I'm also speaking more generally about scenes in Dokkan when they sort of use this type of asset styling, bro. This right here tells me that they can do better, right? Because they have, and they are right now. So it's just like, it's just interesting to me that they cut corners like that sometimes, and they could just make it a lot more, you know, not only just anime accurate, but look nicer, right? This just looks nicer in general, even if this wasn't exactly how it looked in the anime, which it is. This just looks a lot nicer stylistically than, you know, this stinky boy right here. You know what I mean? So, I don't know. Just kind of wanted to get that point out there because I know it was complaining about Vegeta's in-between scenes a lot. Anyway, the boy Goku, holy cow, the aura looks amazing here. I like the little bit of the city moving in the background. By the way, this is so cool. This is some fantastic rotoscoping right here too. This definitely really feels like that. It kind of stinks because I feel like if Beerus was not just the stinky sprite, this would look a lot better in terms of them kind of rotating around each other for this camera angle, right? Because obviously that's what they do in the movie and that's kind of what they're going for here. But it does basically just look like that Beerus's sprite is sort of just like zooming out, right? It's sort of just like... bye-bye. You know what I mean, right? It just kind of zooms out of frame. It doesn't really look like the camera's rotating with him, but obviously if we focus on Goku himself, right, Goku definitely looks like that the camera is rotating around him, and it looks like some fantastic rotoscoping, you know, obviously, you know, before we get to the place where the camera stops here. That's really cool though, for sure. I knew we do have a quick pose change here for Goku, but I think that that's fine. Obviously, it makes sense for him charging forward. And this shot also looks really good, despite how far away this is. Not only is this cut makes sense to me, with obviously Goku charging forward, right? And he hasn't made contact with Beerus yet. You can obviously hear he comes into frame, which makes a lot of sense for how this shot is kind of set up for you. And again, dude, look how nice he looks. This looks so much better than half the shots that were at the same perspective for a lot of other units and Vegeta himself. The other thing I want to point out for this, too, is the aura. Holy cow, dude. Let me wait for Goku to get in frame. Look at how the aura moves around Goku. This is exactly how I remember it from Battle of Gods. And I think they absolutely nailed the red fiery aura of Super Saiyan God. I think that they absolutely killed it, bro. We also have Goku's punch has a very nice follow through there too. And Goku actually zooms forward, which this shot is going to be definitely underrated, I feel like. Oops, I'm hitting slashes. Definitely don't search that in the YouTube search bar, by the way. Anyway, this looks really nice. I love the way that they transition between this, right? They have the background blur, and then obviously they have this little like, you know, sort of like dash motion line, and they have all these lines around Goku with him flying off the screen. I think that looks fantastic, right? It gives a lot of really quick movement. This above shot looks great, by the way. Holy cow, this is such a nice little bit of perspective here. And it's cool that they have this little line kind of trail the sprite to, you know, again, imply really quick movement. This looks really good, actually, ironically enough, for the sprite. Like, this fits really well for this scene. Of course, the trees moving looks really good. And we do have Goku come into frame. Now, I will say the one thing that is a little bit unfortunate about this is that this close-up shot right here where Goku... So cool, by the way, that they basically have him, like, fly past the camera almost. It is a little bit unfortunate that, obviously, this is super pixelated here. But I think it's because it's like, at the... It's basically this asset, right? You can tell that this one, right, where it's kind of crunched, and this one is the same thing, right? I think it's just because it's an asset that you'll end up seeing a little bit farther away in a couple of seconds, and they just kind of didn't make one for the more, like, zoomed-in version of it. It's fine. It's, again, definitely a nitpick, and it is literally on screen for a frame, so it's not that big a deal. But again, since we're analyzing it frame by frame, I think it's just something interesting to point out. This kick from Goku, by the way, along with the aura, looks so good. The rotoscoping here, again, is amazing. Looking at this in the slow-mo really makes me even more impressed with how this looks, right? Obviously, Goku flying forward is basically just a static PNG besides, like, the little bit of movement that they have kind of, like, on the back with his, like, emblem, right? But this part here where Goku begins to kind of wind up here, right? This is so good. It looks like it's 3D, dude. That's crazy. That's insane that they can do that with PNGs. This movement is so nice as well. Obviously, Goku flying towards the camera here. And this, easily, this is where they like peak for this guy, right? This shot looks incredible with Goku flying forward, right? This entire sequence right here looks so good and looks... It's just a movie, bro. They just took the clip from the movie. You can't tell me they didn't just like take the clip from the film and just put it in Dokkan, bro. It looks so good. It looks so nice. Not only does the aura look fantastic, Goku's movement is so nice throughout. Even when he's so far away, he still looks so high quality in terms of the assets used here. And he still has a little bit of movement, right? You can see, obviously, the aura there. But you can see Goku looks like he's flying forward. And you can see he actually lifts his head up despite being that far away, right? Even twisting his body a little bit to obviously get ready for the punch. And now, of course, he's a little bit more like you can actually see what's going on. But the fact that they even put the movement in these smaller assets here, right, like with how far away he is, really shows me how much they wanted to gas this animation up and really put a lot of effort into this one. Because a lot of the time, when they have this exact same thing, it doesn't look as good for other animations. And they just don't have the character move until they're maybe about, like, here, essentially. So the fact that they had him animated all the way through, nailed it. The aura, again, oh my gosh, dude, looks so good. The style of Goku, again, here, looks just like it's ripped out of Battle of Gods. This just looks like it is exactly Battle of Gods. It's not someone trying to imitate the style. It's not, you know, like the anime's version of it. This is the movie, right? It's so nice. And this asset of Goku as well, by the way, super high quality, looks super great. I love the aura kind of in your face. And this is super cool too, with obviously this little bit of perspective with Goku's face kind of getting closer to the viewer. And obviously, you know, this little bit of motion blur that they have at the end. And some nice Gaussian blur as well to kind of imply you're kind of like in the flames almost of the aura, right? Because Goku's getting so close to the camera. I think that's really cool. Then, of course, we have Goku kind of fly past the camera, obviously, to then transition into the kick, which is interesting, right? They kind of have him fly past, and you're sort of like, I guess, getting a face full of his knee is sort of the perspective, besides like his chest. And then they actually transition to the kick. Do they flip this? This is a little... I guess it's supposed to be his leg whipping around. This particular, like, frame by frame here just looks a little bit weird. But the actual kick, obviously, this is, you know, supposed to be like him kicking, and it's really close to the viewer, right? And then, of course, they have this shot where it's zoomed out, where Goku's actually right up against the enemy. And I think this whole sequence looks really nice, too, with Goku kind of giving the beatdown on Beerus. It's kind of funny, because normally I would say, like, these punches don't feel like they have a lot of impact, but this is kind of one of those scenes in anime where, you know, punches in anime kind of work, like, two ways, right? They're either the character goes flying halfway across the planet, or somebody can repeatedly punch the character over and over and over, and they will not move until the punch that they just want them to move away from them happens. It's like a JoJo beatdown, right? Where when you see, like, Giorno, right, beating up Chocolata with the famous, you know, 7-page Muda, right? Or like Jotaro beating down Dio, you know, Muda. And they're like staying right next to the character, beating the heck out of them, right? And then finally on the last punch is when they fly away, when it's like all of those other punches wouldn't have thrown them away, you know what I mean? It is definitely that type of sequence, and obviously that's how it was in the movie, and I think they do a really good job of that, especially with how fast Goku is moving here, dude. Holy, they do a really good job of kind of giving you that effect here. And obviously Beerus does end up flying away here at the end. I really, really like this sequence a lot, right? I think it's very well done, for sure. Okay, so now we have the card art on the screen. By the way, the SSR art is so good. I definitely like this TUR art. But it is definitely kind of cluttered. Also, for some reason, adult Super Saiyan Trunks hair on kid Trunks? Did it look like that in the movie? I don't remember it being that long. It was kind of weird. It kind of looks like almost like Super Trunks' hair, but not as spiky, but on kid Trunks. It's a little weird. But anyway, card art there. By the way, love that they use the orange and red for Super Saiyan God cards. Always a nice little effect. This particular shot looks really good of Goku flying forward, right? I think that that looks very, very nice. Love the aura as well on that too. And, oh baby. Oh baby, that close-up shot right there looks so good. And the follow-through on the punch! Ah! They cooked. Let me give you this in full-time speed here for this particular part, bro. Holy dude. Look at this punch. Look at that. Look at that, dude. Look at how nicely this is animated. And all of these little, like, pose changes work perfectly for how this is, right? Because obviously you have Goku flying forward, and then they kind of change to this, where he's looking to the side, right? And then he's sort of looking up like this, right? And obviously it sort of turns around his body. Again, a little bit of rotoscoping going on here. And then, I'm sorry, they transition to his arm, then, you know, colliding with Beerus's face here, right? Which is very cool that they zoom in on this to really kind of give you, driving it home, how hard that punch is, and then a little bit of a zoomed out shot. But this right here, right? This sequence just looks so good. The whole wind up and actual land of the punch is very great. It looks fantastic. We have this part here, obviously, where Goku sort of has his fist against Beerus, which works really well for this particular scene. And the follow-through, dude. Goku's body on this is so nice that they have that bit of follow-through, because there are so many Dokkan animations where they just use a PNG of the fist colliding with the enemy, right? And it just looks super lame because the character is just standing there, you know, not doing anything because it's just a PNG. But they actually have Goku follow through on the punch there, right? And it looks so well animated. You love to see it. This smoke effect looks really, really good here too. Obviously, the enemy sort of being thrown all the way across the forest there before kind of colliding with the ground there. That is really, really cool. And funny enough, you can kind of see where the character is going to go, because you can kind of see, like, in the assets, there's sort of like a line of trees there, right? You can kind of tell that this line in the ground is sort of what the smoke effect is going to follow. But yeah, dude, the Super Saiyan God sections. I don't think I have a single, like, thing that I am displeased with when it comes to the animations for Super Saiyan God Goku. They cooked, bro. They cooked with my boy. And I'm so happy to see it, because this man has deserved something good in Dokkan for so long, man. I'm really, really happy to see it. Now, obviously, we move on to this scene, which is something that a lot of people were really, really hoping would be included in these animations, and that a lot of people would hope, or were hoping, that would be done really, really well for this particular card, because obviously, let me take a quick drink of water. Hydrate or dihydrate, of course. When it comes to this sort of thing, right, a iconic scene such as this, of course, people do not want this to be not only excluded from possibly the only God Goku that we're going to get for the rest of this game's history, but obviously just such an iconic scene from this film, and one of the scenes that I think literally, I'm pretty sure every Dragon Ball personality that I follow on Twitter has talked about this scene at least once. It's just such an iconic scene, and a scene that everybody loved from this movie. Did they do it justice in Dokkan? Thankfully for the English dub version of this, with the iconic "I will not let you destroy my world" line, they did actually use that audio and did not use some stinky bootleg, you know, Xenoverse 2 or like other video game audio clip that they have for the scene or something like that. You know, "I won't let you take this planet down," or I don't know, something goofy like that. To be honest with you, I've only watched the scene in the anime, so regardless, I'm glad that they got the voice line right. Let's take a look at the actual animation. So, for Goku here, right, I will say, it's a very interesting kind of mix of emotions for me for this particular beginning part of this, right? Because I think a lot of these faces are very goofy, right? I will say, I do think, I'll get to that in a second, by the way. This, like, beginning pose for Goku, I think is fine. I kind of wish there was a little bit more in between this and this, right? With the headbanging, bro. Put some, let the bodies hit the flow. Anyhow, obviously this power-up looks good, right? And these faces do kind of look a little goofy, right? in this, you can tell that they also reuse a couple faces, like this one, right? Of course, looks a little silly, and they use it in the very beginning, right? Right when he lifts his head up here, it's the same asset. But here's the thing about this, right? Obviously, this is the one disadvantage of looking at these animations frame by frame to really get the details of them, is sometimes the details can be not good. The Dabura is in the details, one might say, right? Because obviously, looking at this in slow motion, these faces kind of look a little goofy, right? However, of course, they're not meant to be looked at in slow motion. And for what this scene is trying to accomplish, I think they do a very good job of it, right? Because it's supposed to be Goku going wild and going crazy and screaming his fool head off, right? Obviously, he's reached his limit, basically. And I think for that, especially with how fast everything moves in this particular scene, I think they did a great job with it, personally. I think that they definitely nailed it. There are two little things that I will say, though, that is a little bit unfortunate about it. For one, I don't remember if the ghosting was like this. I seem to remember it not being like this. Although, as much as I'm usually not a fan of this type of thing, I guess maybe this isn't something that's unfortunate in this case then. I think it kind of works for this scene because obviously it shows the intensity, right? You can kind of see Goku in the background, which, you know, then they transition to that asset in a moment here, right? You can see that, like, basically all of the next pose that Goku is going to take is sort of in the background. Or I guess maybe it's more like the previous pose, actually. Interesting. Yeah, it's like the previous pose that he basically just had, right? In this particular scene, right? That kind of like ghosts over him. But I think it works for this. Even though I'm personally like not a fan of the animation in terms of it, like that specific aspect of it, because I think I would just prefer it to be him wiggling his head around. I think for this scene, it works, right? Like, when it comes to these animations, I try my best. Obviously, it's not always possible because, of course, I'm very passionate about this type of thing. But I try and differentiate, like, what I enjoy about it and the more, quote-unquote, objective standpoint. Obviously, that's not really, like, the best thing to say because then it makes it sound like, you know, oh, this is fact. But I think you understand what I'm trying to say, right? The technical aspects I try and differentiate from my feelings of how they look, right? So I think that this looks pretty good. And I think that the little fade effect that they have on it does look pretty well. Or work pretty well. Now, here's the one thing about this scene, this particular essay that is kind of a shame. It's interesting because you can see it in some of these particular shots, right? Let's go back to the slow-mo. Some of the assets for this are very pixelated. Ironically enough, almost looking like the same quality as the Beerus asset. And I don't mean that in terms of like it looking like the sprite. I mean the pixels that we saw on Beerus with those more clear-cut pixels. Especially like this, right? Look how pixelated that looks. Holy dude, we're looking at Boo's Fury on the Game Boy. Like, this is very pixelated. But I'm pretty sure that the reason why this is the case is because let's look for this gritting teeth Goku here, right? That's obviously very close up in a minute here, right? You can see that they use that particular asset here, right? They use that same one here, and obviously this looks a lot better, right? You can kind of see the pixels a little bit, like especially on Goku's teeth, right? And kind of like some of the lines on his neck and stuff. But it's definitely a lot less apparent, right? It's definitely a lot less in your face, right? With this particular shot of it than it is for... let's go back and see if we can't find that zoomed in particular shot right here. It's like one or two more frames after this. Yeah, right here, right? Obviously, because this is so zoomed in, what is going on here is they are using the asset of it a little bit zoomed out that we just took a look at, and they're just sort of using that same asset and zooming in on it. So, of course, you're going to be seeing the pixels a little bit more heavily because you're looking at the image closer up, right? And the image is zoomed in, right? It is a little bit of a shame that they didn't, like, add separate assets for this so that this type of thing wouldn't happen, right? And it would be a little bit more just higher quality for these more zoomed in scenes of Goku, right? Because I mean, like, it's kind of hard to tell when you're looking at it, but if you see it, right, and I'm sure now that I pointed out to you, I'm so sorry, you're probably going to see it every time, that Goku's really pixelated there for like 3 seconds, and the rest of it looks fine in terms of that pixelation. But it's weird, because I feel like I've not really seen that type of thing in a Dokkan SA before, where it looks pixelated in that way. It's like, it doesn't look blurry, it just looks like it's taken from a Game Boy game or something like that. And again, like, I don't necessarily think it's bad, because obviously it saves resources. They don't have to make another asset for it, they can just kind of use the one they already have. But it's weird because I've never seen that type of pixelation, I feel like, in a Dokkan SA before. So that's just kind of interesting to me. It's always curious that I can find new things in these animations in terms of little stuff like this. Alright, we've talked about this scene for long enough. Let's go ahead and move on to the Super Saiyan power-up. This video is already an hour long, I believe. Yeah, definitely if you have made it this far, please drop a like and sub on this video. Hope you guys are enjoying this one. Obviously, with a animation video that is 2 minutes long, excuse me, I'm choking on my water. These always take a lot longer to get through because, of course, with how many animations there are packed into this, and since we're going frame by frame, right, obviously it takes a lot longer than just a simple animation with just a card that has an SA and an active skill, maybe. Anyhow, let's go to this scene. Goku looks fantastic in this power-up pose, right? I like this little bit of movement with obviously him bringing his arms down here. I think that looks very nice. Dude, they nailed these impact frames. They look so good. I love the way that the energy looks, and I guarantee you that for this particular scene, this is just how it looks in the anime, because they're always so good about nailing these. Funny enough, even these look kind of pixelated. You can see the edges of these, which is kind of weird because I feel like I haven't really seen that for these impact frame ones. But this looks really good. Now, here is one that we are hopefully going to find out the mystery to, because this was something that I noticed immediately when I saw this animation. I said, whoa, what's going on here, dog? Hey, yo! This is a little sus. This is a little interesting, that this looks this pixelated. Because that should not be the case. Like, Goku looks fantastic in this particular scene, but that looks like they took an asset that was like 20 times too small and just like increased the size and slapped it in the background for my boy. That is like pixels to the max, bro. We're talking Game Boy games, bro. That looks like, you know, the Goku aura from a Game Boy game right there. So let's see if we can't spot the same sort of thing going on with this aura here for a little bit later in this particular essay, if it's maybe zoomed out a little bit. So we can see that they kind of zoom out a little bit from this shot. You can see a little bit of ghosting, but I think this is fine because obviously it's the camera zooming out. And obviously it's still pretty pixelated when it comes to the Super Saiyan aura here. It's definitely getting a little bit less though. Interesting, I didn't even notice this. There's some little smoke effects on your Goku's feet there. Yeah, I'm guessing this is probably the case there. You can see, obviously, as this shot zooms out, now it looks a lot better. You can still see a little bit of the jagged edges on it. But, of course, it being this far away, yeah, here we go, right? Look at how far away it is now, and that looks spectacular, right? You can't see a single darn pixel on that bad boy. That is definitely the reason why that aura looks so pixelated in the very beginning, right? Because obviously, since the shot gets to this point where it's so zoomed out, and they're just using those same exact assets for how far away it is here, right? For it being this zoomed in on Goku in the beginning of this. Let's just, you know, go through this real quick. Here, I thought I could pause it at the right time. Here, obviously, that's why it looks so pixelated in this big thing, because it's just the asset that they use when it's super far away and normally you wouldn't see like that. Now, this is a little bit of a toss-up for me because, like, personally, I am not a fan of this. because I noticed it right away, and I know for a lot of people it's probably not a big deal, or maybe they won't notice it. I don't know, maybe it is. Let me know in the comments. But for me personally, when I watched this for the first time, let's just look at it in the normal speed and see if you can notice it. I noticed that right away when he first transforms. Granted, it is only there for a little bit, right? It's there for just a moment. But I saw it and I was like, wait a minute, why is the aura like square? I was thinking like something was wrong with the video or something. Like, why is the beginning of that aura have all these squares in it, right? But then I realized it was the particular aura asset that they used for that. So, kind of interesting. I want to hear your thoughts on that in the comments. I'm all for them, you know, like if they really need to cut those corners or reuse those assets like that, that's fine. But for something like this, I don't know. I don't want to say it's unacceptable because that sounds like really, I don't want to say pushing it or like jarring or something like that, but it's pretty bad. That's all I gotta say. I think I'll just end it there because I really don't know what else to like kind of tell you about it besides just it doesn't look good for this part. Anyhow, let's go back to our zoom out. I think they absolutely nailed this section here. Obviously, the aura going crazy looks fantastic. The actual zoom out itself, I think looks really good, right? When the aura is obviously spewing out everywhere, right? I think that zoom looks great. The aura sort of like going crazy around Goku looks really nice. These rocks coming in do look good. These are also a little bit jagged on the pixels, but like it's rocks and they're also on screen for like 2 seconds, which I mean, granted, I know the aura was, but I feel like this is a lot less noticeable, especially with how fast they move. And of course, you're focusing on Goku more than you're focusing on these rocks on the screen. But nonetheless, I still think this looks really good. And obviously, a very good representation of this scene, right? With all the rocks sort of like coming in to sort of crash down on top of Goku. You know, for then the iconic scene where he sort of breaks through the rocks. I do find this a little interesting, though, because I do remember in the beginning, or in this original scene, right? Of course, they get this part, which is really cool, where he's sort of tunneling out of the ground. I do seem to remember, rather than this beginning part here being the, like, scream, right? I seem to remember this part, right, where he says, "I will not let you destroy my world." He's getting entrapped by the rocks in that moment, right? When he says that, right? He's getting the rocks sort of crashing down on him. And obviously, for this part, the rocks aren't on him yet, right? Before he transforms into a Super Saiyan. And then once he becomes Super Saiyan, the rocks kind of embody him. I also do remember as well that you can't see Goku initially when he gets all of the, you know, caves, like rocks collapsed on him. You can't see him from this particular angle here, right? In the beginning, it's just the rocks, and you can kind of see the ground moving, which is interesting that they chose to change the perspective for this to be Goku jumping here, and you can actually kind of see him amidst the rocks there. By the way, the aura for Goku here does look really nice. I like how they animated this. You can also see him screaming. His mouth is open there. I know it's kind of hard to tell, but with the color of his mouth, you can see that there for the head. But then they transition into this scene, which is obviously when Goku's digging through the ground a little bit, which looks really, really cool. The aura does get a little bit pixelated here, as you can see, but it kind of goes back to regular there. What's interesting about this is the aura looks really fine here, but the ground tends to look a little bit pixelated here in certain parts, right? Like this looks fine, and I love how they have all the screen shake, right? That looks really good. Like you can see, right? Look at the jagged edges of that, right? Again, not too bad because it's a cave, and it kind of makes sense for it to look like that. But this particular, like, edging, right, on the edges of the crevices here looks so much higher quality than just, like, this particular one. It's just kind of interesting to me how pixelated this looks, right, compared to even just a couple frames later. It's just very weird to me that, you know, it's just kind of animated that way. But nonetheless, this particular sequence looks great. You can really see it here, by the way, when they obviously zoom into Goku's face. And this is just basically a PNG, right, the whole time with Goku. But I think this is fine. Like, what else would they do for this particular thing? And then, of course, they transition into Goku actually flying upward towards the ground, right? This gets really pixelated a little bit in there. But, of course, you know, more scenes of the ground kind of rocking around. And then we get this very nice zoom in of Goku here, right? Obviously with him, you know, then, of course, taking the Super Saiyan stance, sort of like the Superman fly, but without his arms forward. It is interesting, too, because you can see that it transitions from this little bit of a smaller asset to this bigger one. But I think that this one works a little bit better because it's just a more closer transition, and because everything's so moving so quickly, you can't really see that quick change. You can even see Goku's arm gets a little bit closer to the screen, right, when you change between those. Anyhow, though, Goku looks good here. I will say, I feel like his face looks a little bit different than how it looked in the movie, but again, I could just be misremembering that part for sure. Nonetheless, though, I really like the little bit of blur that they have, obviously, for, you know, how fast Goku's moving. They do have his hair move a little bit, too, which is very nice to see. It's nice that, obviously, they give it that more dynamic movement. And then we have the ground erupt, which does look very, very good, right? And I like that quite a bit, with obviously Goku shooting into the sky. And all the dust effects here look fantastic, right? Holy cow, by the way. Can we talk about this? The actual little spin, right, at the end that they have here of the dust kind of dissipating off of Goku, right, before it reveals him there. So good looking, dude. It's so impressive to me that this is just done with PNGs. And this is pretty cool, obviously, with Goku flying past the screen here, right? They have this little bit of blur to kind of, you know, mask this transition where it's basically just one PNG to another. And it's on the screen for so fast that even though there is that little bit of blurring and obviously Goku kind of flies away, I think it works pretty well. And, of course, this shot looks great with Goku flying up towards the sky. And this is a nice little zoom in, too. With the end here. This is a really long active skill, by the way. Like, holy cow, dude. This is such a long one because this is not part of the same thing, right? Once we get done with this, like, section with the clouds here, it then transitions into the actual super attack. This is a really long active skill, bro. So, obviously, with this part with Goku flying upward, right, this looks pretty good with him getting closer to the camera. I feel like his expression here is a little bit weird too, but nonetheless, we have him sort of zoom into the camera, and they use that zoom in as a little bit of a cut for Goku flying up towards the enemy very, very quickly. I will say, this punch, I wish there was a little bit more movement on it. It is a very quick bing, bap, boop, pow, right? I feel like this one definitely lacks a little bit of impact. We're going to watch it in full motion in a moment here too. I do like at least that Goku has kind of a little bit of follow-up on it, right? You can see that he actually does kind of move a little bit, right? His arm before kind of separating from Beerus and falling back. I do like this where he shoots into the clouds. That looks very good. And then, of course, we have this quick beatdown, which is a couple of PNGs. But there is a little bit of minimal movement in there, right? You can see Goku's arms moving, and as he punches Beerus, right, you can kind of see his body shifting a little bit in some of these. So it's not exactly just a couple of moving PNGs. It's a little bit more than that. I will say I'm not really a fan of this leg kick because I kind of don't like it when they do this with the actual asset itself, where they just kind of spin it, right? They're basically just turning it to have the kick be there rather than actually like animating a proper leg movement. It's also weird that they cut from his leg being in Beerus's face to then back to the punches and kicks again. Just kind of interesting way of putting it together. However, we do have the final punch here, obviously coming up from the back end, which this is a good one to transition because obviously this cut kind of implies it's the same sort of like scene, right, with how the fist is placed. And then, of course, with the actual fist there, it does kind of rock into Beerus a little bit as he flies up into the clouds. And I like the clouds parting there. That final kick by Goku, by the way, very funny. And obviously works very well for the scene. I love all the cloud stuff that they have in here too. That looks great. Let's look at this full beatdown in actual like motion here, right? Because I want to see this. My throat's getting real dry. I apologize if you can hear my voice transitioning throughout this entire video, basically. Yeah, this whole scene, right, with like him cracking through the ground looks really good. I do think you can definitely notice the pixelation on the very end of it, right, when it zooms in. But that shot of Goku right there looks really great. Him bursting out of the ground obviously looks pretty good. And this looks good. The movement, right, on basically everything up until the final zoom in here shot, I think looks really good, right? That looks so nice. And even though, funny enough, like I was saying, right, it has that little bit of ghosting effect and that very quick change of the asset. You literally can't notice it because of how quickly Goku is moving, which is awesome to see. And again, this shot looks great. I think this is where things kind of go downhill a little bit. I feel like just the punches and kicks don't really have a lot of impact. It's kind of like Goku's punching and kicking to no avail. It's kind of how it feels like when it comes to this sequence to me. Which is kind of funny because the Super Saiyan God one, the same type of sequence where it's a rapid punch that we just took a look at, right? Like this scene, let's go back to that. Where was it? Right here. This particular scene feels like all of these punches have a ton of impact to them, right? So, I don't know. It's just kind of interesting that for this end part here, they're doing virtually the same thing and it just doesn't feel like it's as good. You know what I mean? So we finally transition into Goku's proper super attack animation. Let me grab another drink of water here real quick. Can someone give me a hydrate or dihydrate counter in the comments? I need to know. How many times am I drinking water in this video? Anyway, we're in the home stretch, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for sticking with me. It is finally time to take a look at the super attack animation. Oh boy, I have a lot to say about this one. So, first of all, Goku flying up, it is just again a static PNG and we immediately transition into another asset. Not really too much of a fan of that, to be honest with you, but it's alright, I guess. Goku then flying forward, right? Funny enough, this particular pose is like the same pose that they have for the card art, which is kind of funny. Or almost the same pose, I guess. Anyway, Goku flying forward, right? We do have this quick change. Again, way too quick. They need a lot more movement in between this and this, for sure, right? They need a ton more transition between those poses there, 100%. I don't know why that it just jumps like that, and especially considering how much of the aura is sort of enveloping the frame. Going from that to then, you know, basically it just kind of dissipating is weird because you would think that they would want to animate it dissipating a little bit more. But there's a little bit of movement on Goku here, and this posing is a lot better in terms of the transition, for sure, right, when it actually finishes the dissipation, and then transitioning into Goku moving forward, basically past the camera to then punch Beerus. I just think, too, that even in full motion, the sequence just kind of seems a little choppy. If we take a look at it from right here, right, you can even see all of those individual poses kind of changing in between this, right? Which, I don't know, it just shouldn't look that unfluid because there are so many animations in Dokkan that do the same type of like movement and they look a lot more fluid than that to me, right? We have Goku then punch forward, punching Beerus away. I do like that there is a little bit of movement on that. That is very, very nice. Then, of course, we have this transition to this shot, and this does look really cool. I really like this entire sequence here of Goku teleporting around. I think the actual instant transmission looks good, right? I like the little motion lines and the blur that they do for Goku coming in and out. The actual aura appearing and disappearing looks really good, too. You have Goku then pop in to do the Kamehameha against Beerus, right? This looks pretty good. I will say Goku's head looks very strange here. I think it looks kind of weird because of his head shape. It almost looks like a Lego piece. And obviously his face feels like there should be a little bit of it showing. I kind of feel like the side of his face isn't that big. But anyway, it jump cuts to the blue, which I always love when they do this, obviously, because it's kind of like you're in the light of the Kamehameha. And again, ooh boy, just very choppy on the poses for the entirety of that bit. Cool that they reference the teleport, by the way, in the card art. But, or I guess I should say the instant transmission. But yeah, this particular part where we go from this pose, right, which looks good, to bam, I'm not really about it. Once he's finally winding up, this particular part looks really good with him actually pressing his hands together and the hair moving. That looks really nice. But obviously these quick jumps in the poses definitely don't do it for me. I know for a fact that they can do it better, and I know that they can animate the movement a lot better than those really kind of jump cuts. I'll give you my final thoughts in a second, because I was going to say something, but I'll save that for the conclusion. This particular part of Goku launching the Kamehameha forward, I think looks fine. Nothing really too crazy. I think it's just very basic. I will say Goku's face definitely does look a little bit weird here, but I think overall it looks fine, right? It's just a very basic Kamehameha. At least he does whip his arms all the way forward, and the transition to this little far away behind shot actually makes sense with your eyes with it. Obviously, you know, once his hands pass the screen, then, you know, you actually have it coming from the back. And they kind of use the light from the Kamehameha to mask that too. I like how it gets a lot bigger though, and you can obviously see the energy sort of, you know, bellowing up in the Kamehameha. And then, of course, the blast actually launching off, and you can see it from Earth here. I love these little effects that they have on it, and this looks very, very nice seeing it from the ground here. So, overall thoughts on this unit. Very, very interesting unit right here, right? Because I think when it comes to Goku himself, right? Let's go to Goku. I think when it comes to Goku himself, it's clear that their focus was on the Super Saiyan God segments of this unit, right? It is obvious that that is the, you know, like, particular aspect of this unit that they really put their time and effort into, and a lot of the resources. I mean, he's advertised as a Super Saiyan God Goku, so that makes sense to me, right? And I really like these animations. Everything that the God section of this brings to the table is so good. It's literally taken right out of the movie, right? It looks fantastic. I don't think they could have done better, honestly. It looks really great. Now, I think that this beginning part looks fine with the I will not let you destroy my world, you know, basically everything up until this particular section. But in my opinion, everything from there on kind of just goes downhill for me personally. I think that the animations are very basic, and honestly, these animations for especially like the super attack for this Goku could easily belong to a side banner unit Goku. These Super Saiyan animations, right, do not, basically, you know, again, I have to be specific, up until this scene, right, where are we? This scene right here, right, basically up until that point, everything from here on else could easily be a side banner Super Saiyan Goku from this movie. Does not really feel Dokkan Fest to me. It's just kind of interesting because I feel like this is one of the first times where a unit's sort of quote-unquote final form is not what's focused on as much as the kind of middle or beginning form that they take. Because obviously, typically, the, you know, final form is the more hype form of whatever character they're making a unit out of. But in this case, obviously, the Super Saiyan God before the Super Saiyan is what people are more excited about, right? And obviously, it's kind of the more hype aspect of the unit. So it's just interesting to me that the unit's animations kind of go down in terms of the quality, right, after that end Super Saiyan stuff, rather than kind of going up. It is a bit of a shame that they didn't give more love to the Super Saiyan aspect of it. Again, I understand that they wanted to focus on the Super Saiyan God stuff, but I still feel like that they could have done a little bit better with the Super Saiyan stuff. I will say, if they were going to sacrifice it, I'm glad that they made the certainly more important aspects of this unit look better. It's just a shame that it doesn't feel as complete as it could when it comes to the Super Saiyan animations. And, as well, it's interesting that they kind of changed the way that the I will not let you destroy my world scene kind of plays out. Maybe they just couldn't do it where all of the rocks are kind of crashing down on Goku. Maybe they just couldn't figure out how to animate it. I'm not really sure. Just kind of interesting to me that they decided to go that route with this guy. But I'm very happy that the Super Saiyan God, which is easily more important than the Super Saiyan stuff here, is obviously, you know, very well represented with this unit, and a very good, you know, showing of the Battle of Gods movie. In terms of Vegeta, I think he's okay. There is most certainly way, way, way better side banner units than him, right? I think that there are a few shots in these particular essays that looked really, really good, right? Definitely, I think the Super Saiyan 2 animations are probably the best in terms of what we have to, look at here, right? This particular scene right here where where Vegeta, brings basically kind of the camera rotates around him as he's zooming towards it, or I guess after he's zooming towards it, I think is definitely the best shot from this. But I feel like the rest of it is kind of a little bit lackluster in my opinion, especially with how good Goku is. Again, I do understand though, obviously he's a side bending, and of course Goku is a Dokkan Fest, but like, I think that Super Saiyan Goku's animations are arguably, right, comparable to Vegeta's, right? I would even say that Vegeta's animations in a lot of aspects are better than the Super Saiyan section of Goku, which is just kind of interesting to me, right? But that is basically my full thoughts on this unit. I know that this video is essentially like movie length because I just had so much to say about this particular unit, but obviously, with how many animations we had to take a look at here today, of course, this video was going to be a really, really long one. And not to mention, I had plenty to say about the animations for these. So again, let me know what you think in the comment section below. I would be really, really curious to hear what you have to say. And again, as well, let me know what you think. Funny enough, speaking of which, we're getting right to the scene right here. Let me know what you think about this whole little pixel kind of, I don't want to call it a debacle, but these little pixel shenanigans here with, obviously, because they're zooming, or they're using these assets that are supposed to be zoomed out, so zoomed in, you end up with something looking like this. Let me know what you think of this in the comments, because I'd be curious to hear what you have to say. Do you think it's a big deal? Do you think it's not that big a deal? What are your thoughts on it? But of course, if you did enjoy, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Definitely will be, of course, talking about every new unit that comes out with these animation analysis. I'm hoping to do more content on this channel in the future too. I know right now I've kind of been a little bit slower in terms of the content output lately, but expect more videos soon, hopefully. I know I feel like every YouTuber says that, huh? But thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you have a fantastic day. Hope you have good luck pulling this guy. Obviously, it's always super exciting when we get a unit on JP and Global at the same time, especially a unit that is as hype as this guy, right? Obviously, everybody and their mother has been looking forward to this guy. Like, this guy's crazy. And I'm so glad that they made him crack, too. Not just in the Super Saiyan God animation department, but the kit department, too. Like, he's really good. And Vegeta's actually really great as well, which is, really good, too. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will catch you guys in the next one. I'm going to go drink some water. Dokkan Assets out. Peace.